Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the How Can I Help series. This is the first episode in the series. It looks like you are starting to apply for jobs. How can I help? Before we start, I have a few quick things to go over. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We ask that you be kind and respectful to everyone, including our speakers. We want the reactor to be a place everyone feels welcome. Please ask questions using the live YouTube or Twitch chat. In the chat, I'll also be sharing some links to the Reactor Meetup page and monthly newsletter if you're interested in checking out other sessions we have coming up. If you haven't already, please check in using our event check-in at aka.ms/reactor check-in with event ID 14481. Today's session will be recorded and up on our YouTube channel in about 24 to 48 hours. And finally, I will share a link to our Reactor survey. If you have a few minutes, we greatly appreciate your feedback. I am now going to pass it over to Chloe and Gwen.
Oh my gosh, how do we even start?
What an entrance.
That was such a great song. Shout out to the wonderful, wonderful song producer, Maddie McGuire. We're a big fan. That song absolutely slaps.
Slaps.
Welcome to How Can I Help? First episode. So exciting. How are you feeling, Gwen? It's our first stream together. Well, for the Reactor. We did a little stream last week, but I've been so pumped for this. How are you feeling?
Yeah, it's exciting because we've been planning it for a while, and just listening to the song reminds me of that entire meeting we spent just like finding the perfect song. And I'm glad that the chat is reacting the way that they're reacting.
Ooh, people
are definitely vibing to this.
I was so busy prepping the tweet that I'm about to send that I didn't even pay attention. Let's go through the chat here. Oh my goodness, we got okay. First of all, piano emoji. Yes. Thank you. We spent a lot of time picking this song. Ooh, this makes me feel like we're about to watch some Microsoft CBTs. What's CBTs? What does that stand for? Another acronym I don't know.
I'm not familiar with that.
Let us know, Rodney. What is CBTs? Feel like you're back in the 90s? Great. That's what we're going for.
That's a good time. That's a good time.
I feel like when we were picking this music one, we were like, okay, we need something that is a jam, is like a song that people are gonna love, and we're like, we need like a sick like saxophone or guitar solo, and this song delivered. So all that hard work and effort we put in. If they play the Windows 95 startup chime when they begin, my day will be made. That is feedback that we will take for the next episode.
Now we need a remix.
Yeah, remix coming to y'all soon. Wow, so much nice things. Computer-based training. Okay.
I have never heard that before. CBT.
Tell me more about CBT. Was this like a throwback thing from back in the day? Yeah, amazing. Gwen.
Should we introduce ourselves?
Yes. Okay, you go first while I tweet this tweet because I know who you are, but the people at home, they need to know.
Yeah. Hi everyone. My name is Gwen Peña Sigüenza. You can call me Gwen. I'm a cloud advocate here at Microsoft, and we are starting this series alongside. I've always wanted to work with Chloe, even before I started at Microsoft. I'm such a big fan, so I'm very, very grateful to now be on the same team. Can you believe that? Can you believe the journey?
My heart. I'm thrilled.
Yeah, here we are, and we've got quite an interesting series. I think there's so much technical content out there. We make a lot of technical content, and though it's very important, we felt like, oh, you know what, we should talk about some more career focused stuff. So that's what that's the goal with the series, especially for this month.
Absolutely, and I feel like the number one question, because I work on the Next Generation Experiences team with Gwen, and I work a lot with our Microsoft student ambassadors and with students specifically. So a lot of our beginner and 101 content, I should say. And the number one question that I get all the time is, how do I get a job at Microsoft? Which, that's a different answer for everyone that you talk to. And also like resume, all of the career help tips, because we work with a lot of really smart developers. Really where a lot of experience and knowledge is lacking is in that job search part of things. So we're so excited to be like sharing this with you. And I don't know, this may be exclusive. I've shared this on a couple of streams before, but I was a recruiter in a former life. So
you got some insight. You got some intel for us?
I do have some intel. I have some like tips of the trade that like recruiters aren't going to tell you. And I'm going to telling you in this series. So we'll get into all of that. But Gwen, I think tell the lovely humans a little bit about because we both have kind of interesting non-traditional paths to working at Microsoft. What's your hero's journey? What is your Marvel origin story to be on this stream today?
So I started, my first job was at an Apple store selling iPhones, iPads, all your good stuff, right? And then I did like some tech support there. Then I moved into help desk. Then I moved into system administration. Then I moved into cloud engineer. Then I moved into training architect. Started a YouTube channel then. Actually started a YouTube channel when I was a cloud engineer and like did it for a year. And now I've been at Microsoft officially 3 months.
Yay! I should know this, but I think I've been at Microsoft 3 years. Oh my gosh, I should know that. I should look in my portal link later.
Probably should.
But my anniversary is coming up a little bit as well. So
wow.
That's so exciting. Oh my gosh, 3 months. Celebrate. I wish I had like a air horn sound effect on my stream deck. Next time, we're taking feedback on the Windows
the chime
sound effect, the chime, and also we'll have sound effects next time.
Absolutely.
We're already getting some great questions in the chat. I'm so excited. Yeah, well, that's really cool because I think it's really I'm really particularly excited for this series because I think a lot of folks think, I can't get a job at a big company or like, how do I go from what's on my resume? We already have a really, really great question here from Lee Walker, which is, how do you get experience when every job listing already wants you to have experience?
That's a good one.
We're going to be covering that in this series 100%.
That's a good one.
But yeah.
There's
Ooh, another one. My question is, how do recruiters view candidates without LinkedIn profiles? Okay, we're taking these in our back pocket. And continue to drop your questions in the chat because we'll not only like take
we're paying attention.
We're paying attention.
Absolutely.
And we'll take notes for future episodes. Ooh, you know what might be useful, Gwen? Maybe I'm going to bring up our registration page to kind of like show people what we're going to be doing in this series.
Right.
Any other context you think is worth sharing about your background, Gwen? Because I think you have such an interesting, like,
Yeah.
path to here.
I'm a college dropout. I know that the do you need a degree to get into tech is very, very, very popular discussion to have, especially on tech Twitter and tech social media in general. So I did 2 semesters of comp sci and then I dropped out for like a bunch of reasons, and I don't have any formal like degree or anything like that. So I would say I'm self-taught. YouTube University.
YouTube
Yeah.
adversity.
Yeah, YouTubeversity. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a question I get a lot too, because I do not have a computer science degree either, and I get a lot of just random DMs on Instagram and Twitter, like, how do I get a job without a degree? So hopefully I can just send them this video in the future, this whole series, and be like, boom.
That's definitely what I want to. I know you have quite an interesting journey into where you're at now as well.
Oh yes.
We can get into that if you'd like to, but we could also clue in everyone. I know you were going to bring up the registration page and sort of give everyone an idea of what we're going to be covering, because I do want to add that I already see there's a bunch of questions here, a bunch of great topics, and we do have several episodes. This I think we're doing 4 this month.
We
right?
do. Here, I'll bring that up real quick.
Yeah.
So we're doing 2 months, y'all, worth of content here. We're skipping the week of Thanksgiving because we #thankful. But to give you an idea of what we'll be covering and maybe why we'll save some of your questions for later in the series. And it's clickbait. You got to come back for the to be continued.
You got to stick with us. We're building something here, right?
So we have. Oh, here, let me hide this thing. So we're on our first one here, which is just sort of an overview. And also on this episode in particular, Gwen and I are going to be sharing a little bit about ourselves, talk about why we're qualified to do this and all of that fun stuff, but also share some like juicy stories and also do some throwbacks to our old resumes to like.
I was just looking at my one from 2019.
And talking through those, because also we'll get into that in a second, but another big part of our job is we do see a lot of resumes of students and give feedback on those. So and for this is also a series that if you aren't a student, if you're a later in career job changer like we were, we're here for you as well. So this is truly for everyone.
For everyone.
But next week, the 12th, we're going to be talking about LinkedIn.
Yeah,
talking about all the ways to make your LinkedIn gorgeous and amazing. Poppin', slappin'. Then we're doing resumes, which is a little self-explanatory, but oh my goodness, Gwen and I were talking about this before we went live. There are so many pet peeves that I have about resumes that like, it's not people's fault. We don't talk about these things.
There's no standard really. It's like, it's the Wild West.
Yeah. We also have cover letters. So best practices for cover letters. Should you make a different cover letter for every job? How should you think about your cover
$1
letter?
million question.
All of that fun stuff. I love this comment here, Gwen. Where did it go? Oh, YouTube magna cum laude.
I love this. I need to make this into a t-shirt.
Amazing. We also have, it looks like you're starting to interview. How can I help? So that's going to kick off our November series. So our first month of October is all about the like applying for jobs. Second month is, oh crap, you got the job, like or the interview.
Now what happens, right? Yeah.
How do I prep? Then we're doing, let's see. Oh, there we go. Phone screens, an important one. Who among us has not bombed a phone screen and learned from it?
I have a great story on that.
I can't wait for the story time. That's going to be the best part of this series. Is like it's like therapy, truly. I also want people like to encourage people to in the chat to share their stories with us, because I think the most important part of us doing this, and one of the inspirations for this, is like kind of using this as group therapy in a sense, because a big part of my job search, especially as a junior candidate coming into this industry, was like, you really don't know what is normal and what isn't and what other people have experienced. So there's like a lot of shame around like, especially
failure.
Engineering interviews are weird. They're bad and weird. Let's be real. They're really bad. And then we have on-site interviews, which, are a little different in the global Panera, as I like to call it. And also whiteboarding interviews.
That's a fun one. I feel like that's going to be a popular one.
So I'm going to drop the link to this reg page. Actually, no, it's the link that we have down like in the corner and up on the bookshelf over here. If you go to aka.ms/how can we help the letter U, you can go to that landing page we were just at, register for the Reactor events. You can also check out our YouTube playlist on the Reactor if you prefer to just check out YouTube. But I'm so excited! I'm so excited. Okay, let's check the comments real quick, Gwen. What's up here? I want to work for Microsoft. Lots of great stuff.
This one was great. My number one question has to be, how was the cake? I think you're referring to the ice cream, the Microsoft ice cream that I tweeted about that I want to go get. I'm going for that after the stream, so I'm very much looking forward to that.
Delish. I'm very jelly. I did not see any ice cream options in my local area. Wow, we've already got a lot of great questions. Boris says we all need that Chloe energy in our lives.
Yes.
I'm running on fumes, Boris.
We need it.
I appreciate that comment. It's been a long day. Yeah, we've got, recruiting so hard. Oh my gosh, couldn't agree more. What else do we have here? Oh, Bill Gates is a close second. Otherwise, GBS is Boris's favorite dropout. I didn't know that about you, Gwen. That's really interesting because I think a lot of people don't see themselves in this industry because they're like, Bill Gates is an exception, like blah, blah, blah. But like truly, I'm here. I used to sing and dance and tap dance on stage. Like, which reminds me, I got to get to like why I'm here. That's important too.
Yeah.
Great. Ooh, we got people who are registering. Great.
Love it. Love it. Love the support.
Okay, who am I? How am I here? I have the same question, truthfully. Y'all, if I say this a lot to like my relatives and friends that have known me from my previous life, if I were to go in a time machine and tell myself, even like I want to say 5 or 6 years ago, like you work at Microsoft, I'd be like, what? Like I don't know that. What are you talking about? So my path is also very non-traditional. I grew up in a theatrical family. I was born into the arts. My mom was a costume designer. My dad was a director playwright. I went to a performing arts high school. I did musicals my whole life. I got my BA in theater performance from San Francisco State University, which is what brought me to the Bay Area, Silicon Valley. Quickly realized I needed a day job because no one really tells you when you're getting a theater degree, but it doesn't pay that well. So money is important, especially if you live in the most expensive city in the world, like the Bay Area. So I kind of stumbled into tech. My first job ever was working at Yelp, I should take a step back. All through college, I worked in retail. I was an after-school program coordinator. I was a summer camp instructor. I was a children's birthday party entertainer. I really did all the jobs, truthfully. Didn't really learn about like the tech world until I got a job at Yelp. Literally a job I got through Craigslist, applying through Craigslist. This is Yelp pre-IPO. And I was a account manager, which is the fancy word for sales. And that gave me an insight into this world of tech. Because if you've ever done theater, Gwen, or any kind of performing arts kind of stuff, you're lucky if you get a slice of pizza or something at a rehearsal. But when I found out there was free deli meat in the fridge,
snacks,
I could make
drinks,
snacks. There was free
ping pong table.
I mean, pool table, ping pong table. Like, I was like, this tech thing is cool. And I don't know what's happening here, but like, I want to work in tech. So when you do theater, you rehearse nights and weekends and perform nights and weekends. So I knew I needed a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday job. And the most popular one in the Bay Area was tech jobs. So ever since that, I literally did everything, y'all. And we'll be going through our LinkedIns and resumes on this show and getting in more detail. But like, I went from Yelp to Zirtual, which was a virtual personal assistant company. So I was a Zirtual assistant. I was an executive assistant to a bunch of like high profile tech people for a while. I was an office manager. I was a recruiter. I really did everything except engineering and tech. And, it wasn't until about 5 or 6 years ago where I started getting an interest in coding. I didn't know this was a space that I could get into. So I'm truly here because of the guidance and mentorship and help of a lot of people who are doing similar stuff to what we're doing. So if you're tuning into this and you're like, I don't see myself in tech, well, guess what? You can do it because we're here. We did it and we believe in you, truthfully. So yeah, I ended up doing a boot camp. I'm a boot camp grad from Hackbright, and literally just was like, oh, this coding thing's interesting. I want to see if I can do it. I literally, Gwen, thought that engineers were like dudes in white lab coats who were like hammering computers together. I had no exposure to this world other than, as an office manager recruiter, I would see the engineers walk in with their big headphones and their like hoodies. I was like, I don't know what they do all day. So this is all to say that like we really want to make this a series that is useful and helpful and can answer all those questions that, I was lucky enough to have a partner who could answer these questions for me, but this information is not accessible to a lot of people out there, I think. And especially, oh my gosh, Gwen, don't you wish that someone would have been like, yo, Gwen, do you know what it's like to interview as an engineer? Like, ever heard of whiteboarding? Because like that's a big part of why we wanted to make this series, is just like explain that process, right?
I remember those first few interviews were like, I was just leaving and then I'm like, obviously I bombed terribly, but also I'm like, how could I have ever prepared myself for that? Like I had it's not that I had expectations, but even like what ended up happening, I was like, how is this a thing? Like, how is this an actual interview process? Here's a little interesting comment. I did a BA in arts management.
Daniel, oh my gosh, I love this. Arts management, like, where would we be without? That's like the thing, right? Y'all, like, if you come from that non-traditional background, there's so many ways that you can use your skills from your previous roles into your current roles. And I think that's really like
I was just about to add that. I was just because you have such an interesting background, and you would think, but maybe not specifically related to tech, but you would think like, oh, I can't utilize these in interviews or when I'm asked questions, but you can. Like I remember using my retail experience and such for these like tech roles, and it helped a lot. We'll talk about all this, of course, but I'm just saying.
I love this comment. I was a trauma counselor and now I'm a sysadmin. Oh my gosh, so relatable. Like the crossover there. Like you wouldn't think that there's crossover, but there is. I can argue.
Yeah, definitely.
Who amongst us has not experienced trauma as a sysadmin? I mean, come on, like that's so relatable.
Especially with an outage.
I encourage so many of my stage manager friends, like if you've never done a play or a musical or anything on stage before, like stage managers like run the whole operation. Like they get you there on time, they call the show, everything. That's a PM. That's like a product manager. Like,
I was about to say that sounds like a PM to me.
So translatable. And that's really what we're going to be jumping into. Oh, I was a mechanic for a while. We have someone on our team. Anthony Bartolo used to work at
I didn't know that.
Tire. Yeah. Yeah. We've got, and that's what's really, really cool. And something that I love to see here at Microsoft is, we're very encouraging. And I think that that's your superpower in this industry, right? Like, you wouldn't think. I remember when I went to my boot camp, I was like, gosh, I wasted like 20 plus years of my life doing musicals on stage. What am I doing? Like none of this. I use my theater degree every day, Gwen. Truly. I really use.
Especially in our roles. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Ooh, I'm checking the chat here. I love the trauma counselor. That's so great. Brendan North's here. Yay. Brendan and I used to do musicals together. I adore Brendan North.
Love it.
I definitely see how my skills apply to other jobs. Trouble is convincing employers that those skills are applicable. And that's what we're going to be covering in this series. It's like how to tell your story, how to like talk about yourself, and like, because who amongst us has not been in an interview where someone's like, tell me about a time that you failed, or like, tell me about a time that you supported a team. And I've never been a manager, like when I was interviewing, like, how do you answer those things? How do you tell your story? Yeah. Also, no degree. Oh my gosh. We have so many great comments in here.
You know what I was going to bring up about that no degree thing? I was recently speaking with someone on one of our LATAM customer success teams, and they've been in the field since the 90s. And then they were telling me like, back then, like there was people left, right, and center getting into the space because of the dot-com boom, getting into the space without degrees. And like, I feel like it's just been a thing in tech forever, but we still can't get over the fact that like, yes, you can like, we still have the mindset of like, oh, like it's still like a question, which is odd. Cause like, 30 years later, it's like, oh, it's been a thing.
Well, there's such a stigma, I think. Like, my favorite story that I love to tell, I won't call out the company, but I have a dear friend who works at a pretty major tech company out here in the Bay Area. And she told me this story about they interviewed a candidate. And when all of the people synced up to like review the candidate's interview, one of the people on the interviewing panel voiced like, well, this person doesn't have a degree, so like I just don't think they would do well in the role. And all of the other people on the interviewing panel were like, well, I'm self-taught. Well, I don't have a degree. And like, it's just so common in this industry. And I think also, and this is a conversation I'm sure we'll have a lot on the show. A lot of it is accessibility. Like I was good at computers as a kid, and I didn't have people in this space to guide me to this path. God, I wish I could go in a time machine and be like, girl, learn to code now. Like, Don't wait till your 20s, like do it now. But I think there's a lot of, access. Like a lot of people don't grow up with computers in their home. A lot of people have never seen a female engineer before. I have on my desk here. I don't know if anybody's ever seen Chippendale Rescue Rangers, but this is Gadget from Chippendale. This is the only female engineer that I had to look up to in my life. Like there was nothing in pop culture to say like, yo, have you thought of this? Or like, I didn't have parents or family members in this College of Arts and Crafts. Yeah, it's I'm just so excited for this series because these are questions that we get all the time. And now we can just like point this. Also, we should mention that we're doing a little homage to Clippy here, of course.
Our favorite.
How can we help? And we really are here to help. So if there are things that you don't see that we're covering in this series,
let us know.
Let us know. Maybe we'll do December. Like, who knows? Maybe this will go on forever.
Little lightning round or something like that. Little.
Yeah. holiday edition.
Holiday special. Love it.
Anything else we should share before we really like
dive in?
I'm trying to think. Let's see. I'm looking at the comments.
College Shopper right here. I was gonna add that like it's up to us who are in the field without like with non-traditional backgrounds to like sort of pave the way for others as well, right? So I'm glad we're able to do that. Mm-hmm.
The hardest part that I tell people, especially junior devs and people from boot camps, the first job is the hardest. Like getting your foot in the door and getting a company to believe in you, and also just like we should definitely make sure we have this conversation during I'm going to make a note of it, during the on-site interviews. As a junior candidate, or even not as a junior candidate, you're interviewing the company too. Like, does this company have mentorship
both ways.
For a new engineer?
Ways.
Like
both ways.
Yeah. To be fair, Gadget is a great role model. I agree with that. And Gadget's Go Coaster still alive and well in Toontown. I mean, come on.
Normalized, no degree. Look at that.
Love to see it. Guac Girl. I'm so excited to see you back in the stream too. And Guac Girl, I'm going to be doing some avocado content soon, as I mentioned.
Oh, that's right. You were talking about that to me like a little earlier,
right? Instead of having a grade requirement, the degree requirement got dropped. Okay. Oh, I see. There's a first part to this. We had a new grad manager who tried to implement a rule that candidates need a 65% average. Only 4 or 5 of the grads that had been hired had grades that high. Yeah, I mean, there's so many, and I think that's another thing we'll dive into a lot is like there's a lot not in your favor as a non-traditional background engineer. And again, this is for people who do have degrees as well. We'll be sharing tips for everybody, but like those barriers to entry, like recruiting software that filters you out, and like how to network, how to like create a network in which you can get job information and leads from, will be a big part of this as well. So yeah. Ooh, we've got people here. I'm a high school dropout and going to get into tech. Yes. Join us, please.
Love it. That's the energy.
Many people here who are just like here to, we've got Daniel who says right now I'm in bank compliance, looking to get into cloud AI. We'll definitely follow Gwen because living, breathing example here. I also love this comment. I'm literally always advocating for people to get into tech, considering it's relatively easy for getting into that space. Yeah, I mean, I will say you got to have a lot of resilience, and I think I was oddly conditioned for this because as an actress, I was constantly rejected. Told I was too short, too tall, too skinny, too fat, all the different things. My hair is the wrong color. So I think maybe my skin was a little thicker getting into tech. So maybe all those rejections didn't hurt as much. But yeah, there's definitely that first job's the hardest. How was getting your first job, Gwen? Like, what was that journey like for you?
First job in tech, I guess I would consider it the help desk gig. In my retail experience helped a lot with that. I feel like help desk is just retail but in tech because there's still so much like customer facing things you have to deal with, communication, your soft skills and all that kind of stuff. So I had plenty of examples from like being at a chaotic Apple store on a Sunday with very, very angry customers that I could use the interview. I took a lot of time to practice my interviewing skills and get my stories down. And I would literally practice in front of a mirror, like, okay, this situation happened. And I would like practice my stories out. That way, when I actually landed my first like phone call, which we're going to have an episode on as well, I was able to like confidently speak about the things that I'd been through in my previous role. And then I landed on site and then again, sort of like, talked about the similar things, but a little bit more into detail. And yeah, that turned into the gig for me.
Yeah, I think I'm pulling up an image right now because this image actually used to be. So I went to an all-female software engineering boot camp called Hackbright, which was a very lovely, supportive, wonderful environment. It's where I learned about imposter syndrome. It's where I learned about all of the fun pieces of this industry I didn't know about, whiteboarding,
Mhm.
all of that. But this was in the bathroom in one of the stalls, and I would see this every day when I took a bio break, and it's the iceberg of success, where the top is like what people see. It's like
Mhm.
success, and then underneath there's like persistence, failure, sacrifice, disappointment, discipline, hard work, dedication. And I think what I really want to stress to everyone is getting a job in tech, especially your first job, is not the easiest. It takes a lot of rejection and practice and lead code problems and oh my goodness, like contouring your resume a certain way and all of that different stuff. So I always express, especially to folks that I'm mentoring or newer people in the space, especially non-traditional background folks, that if everyone could get a job as a software engineer, we'd all be working as software engineers. I mean,
Yeah.
you gotta like it, first of all. That's
Mhm.
very important. Do you like learning how to code? All of that. But I think it's important to share that, like, I think a lot of people on social media, Facebook, Instagram, see my journey from musical theater actors to tech, and they're like, "Oh, you went to boot camp and you got a job." No, oh my god, I cried so much. like, like I was at this part, this like crying heart for so long because I was just like, this is never going to happen. I'm an imposter. What am I doing here? Like, how do I get from point A to point B? And we really want to be for you what we wish that we had when we were going through this. So think of us as your not only your people to go to advice to, but your cheerleaders also. We want to be realistic that like it takes time to figure out how to crack into this industry. And yeah.
There's
Ooh,
a there's an interesting comment here I wanted to bring up, sort of pair with another one because someone else had mentioned help desk, and that's sort of where I started. And this person says, would it be a good option to try to enter a company in a different role that's not software engineering and then transition? I think the good thing about tech and like specifically cloud is there is such a range of fields that you can get
yeah.
into, disciplines that you can get into, that the previous experience you can leverage in like there's development, administration, security, our solutions architect, like, and the list goes on and on and on and on.
Support
So
and sales and like so many
you
different
could, yeah,
routes.
exactly.
Yeah.
The thing is to get into the space and then spend some time, figure out what you really want. Because my thing is like I started at help desk and I thought I wanted to end up being a software engineer. For me, it was like I want to code, I want to code, I want to code. And then as I worked help desk and I was like exposed to a bunch of technologies, I was like, actually, this cloud stuff's kind of cool. Here I am 6 years later, in the space that I never I used to think like I'm never gonna get into cloud. I want to code, but like here I am now, right? So it's like that's a great thing about tech is like you can find the space that you fit in, and it's not all about programming, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, for me, the advice that I always give, someone asked for a link to the image, so I just dropped in the chat. So I have a lot of folks who come to me and say, like, hey, should I take this junior job as a support engineer? So my advice typically is, even with the previous tech experience, obviously I wasn't doing any coding on the job. I was working in tech companies. Do I think that helped me on my resume? Maybe a little bit. It's, you have to do a little hand holding and explaining to recruiters and hiring managers of like how that's applicable to like this coding job.
Absolutely.
But I do think there can be at least some of the advice that I got, from my mentors is with a support engineer job or something like that, it's your mileage will vary on the company. And I say this because I worked at a lot of tech companies and expressed interest in like, I want to go. Here's an example. I used to work at Juul and Pax Labs. It's a vape company, but they also had, engineering and tech. And I expressed my interest in it, but there just really wasn't the mentorship put in place or even just like the career path for me to go from, office manager to that role. So I think it's important when you're interviewing for a tech company to express that and say, hey, I'm looking to join a tech company so I can get from point A to point B. And if they can't do that for you or they can't, no one can promise that for you per se, but even talking to other employees of like, what has your career trajectory been here? I know at Microsoft, we're really supportive of people being like, hey, I work on this now, but I want to go work on this really cool thing over here, like getting you to that place. But unfortunately, and something that a kind of misstep that I see often from, boot camp grads and folks that I mentor is they'll join a company because they're like, oh my God, I got to get a job. I got to get a job now. I need a job yesterday. And they take the first job that gets offered to them. And I get it. Like I was was low on finances. I needed a job post boot camp. Like,
Mhm.
it's not like I was working full time during this boot camp. I was living off what was very little was remained of my savings. But a common mistake that I see is taking the first job offer, maybe it's like a 2-hour commute or something, like some really, and not asking the right questions, like, is there mentorship here? And then they get to the job and they're just kind of like, hello, hello, hello. Like, can anybody help me? Because there's
Yeah.
just not the support. A lot of times companies will say, we really want to mentor someone, but you really need to ask those questions of like, great, have you mentored someone before? What resources are available to me for that? So I always tell people, you can do it. Like, you can get that first job and like get into a junior end role. It's going to take a little bit more time, but oh my goodness, so much better to wait and find the right job than to have to interview all over again like 3 months later. Like, interviewing as an engineer is a nightmare. So, depending on where
Here's
you interview. But
here's a great comment on to build on what you just said. Yeah, I've learned to ask, what's an example of internal growth? Who are the employees you have started in junior roles and been promoted?
that's a great, just like copy and paste that, y'all. That's so good. Because truly, like, people can say, like, just like how, okay, here's an example that I'll give. Back when I used to do acting stuff, there would always be a special skills part of everyone's resume where it's like, I also can skydive, swim, roller skate, rollerblade, unicycle. And then like they would be like, oh great, so you just got cast in this commercial where you have to drive stick shift, and you're like, oh no, I put that on my resume. And so like people can say they do things, but they
Mhm.
don't. You really want to ask for examples of like, great, so you say that you want to mentor someone junior in this role, but have you ever done that before? Because
Yeah.
that's a very big difference between wanting to do it and knowing how to successfully do that. So always ask those questions, like that one. That's perfect, Brendan.
Yeah, it's I'm trying to scroll through these. We're getting a bunch of comments. I don't want to miss any of them because I know a lot of them are great. Learn to embrace rejection. I love that. Aquatic science grad. What
Oh my
a
gosh. Wait,
major.
tell us what, like, I'm so curious. What jobs do people get as an aquatic? Like, because for me, I'd be like, oh my God, did you want to work at SeaWorld or something? Because that would be a
Yeah,
dream
that's what I
job.
thought too. That would be so cool.
Very cool. Yeah, I think that, and that's the
We
thing,
give
right?
that
Like,
ready. Yeah.
that's so cool about being able to change careers later in life, because when you go in, the one frustrating part of like switching careers is that you're up against a lot of junior candidates, and but
Mhm.
but for people like us, folks like us, Gwen, and I'm sure a lot of people in the chat, it's not like we're some new grad who has no job experience. Like, we've worked in other industries and have all these applicable skills. So that's really what we're going to be focusing on in this series, in
Yeah.
addition to like, how do I get all these assets together to interview, is like, how do you pose yourself? And maybe you have worked in tech as an engineer and you want to get a job as a PM, or vice versa, you're a PM who wants to get more technical and get an end role. We're really going to help you in this series with how to like frame yourself in that light. Like, maybe you're ex-military and you want to know how to like talk about those skills in getting, I don't know, like a recruiter job even. Like, that's what we're here to do. So
We've been answering a bunch of questions. I know there were some things that we wanted to sort of
yes.
get to in this episode, but I'm like more than happy to keep answering questions. Of course, I know I said I had an old resume of mine that we could probably look at just as like, I don't know, a nice throwback or something, as long as people don't roast me.
Yeah, so I didn't have time to remove all my personal items and I don't want to get doxxed, but let's share yours.
Let
And
me
then maybe
see.
like we'll take the rest of the time for questions, because I love it.
Yeah.
And we'll dive into these a lot in the individual episodes as well. But let's see, maybe I can share a horror story. I mean, it's almost Halloween. I can share a spooky interviewing story.
Love it. I'm gonna make sure I need to just like remove
Yeah.
the
How about while you do that, I'll tell some of my Tales from the Crypt interview stories.
Go ahead, Emma.
So let's see. Oof, which one? Okay, so on the topic of getting recruited by filtering software, or getting filtered by recruiting software, I should say.
Mhm.
So as I mentioned before, first job is the hardest. And I know that's really hard to hear as a junior candidate. Unfortunately, it's very true. But getting through the front door, once you get that first end or tech job, it's a lot easier once you have something on your resume. We had a question earlier that asked, how do I get a job when the job requirements say I need to have the job beforehand?
Mhm.
There's a meme that I saw a while ago that's like, have you ever died? And it's like a drop down menu. And it's like, oh my God, like, how would I be filling out this form? It's very chicken and the egg, right? So I remember being so furious of like, I would apply for jobs. Like I remember the first job I ever applied for was Fitbit because I wear my Fitbit every day. I love Fitbit. And I was like a fresh new grad of boot camp. I was like, I'm gonna apply to my first job. Let's do it. And I pressed send and I got rejected 10 minutes later, I want to say, maybe 15 minutes later. And it was very clear that like a human person had not looked at my resume. Clearly this job was like looking to see if like, you know, maybe I had a previous job in that space or a degree. Like it really truly was automated. And I love to share that story because, you know, nowadays like this happened to me often. Like I want to say maybe like 50% of the jobs that I applied for I got immediate rejection on through a recruiting software that was like, do they have a degree? No, like filter them out. So my first message there is, if you're a hiring manager or recruiter, don't do that. It's bad and you're missing out on a lot of great candidates. But it was always very funny to me because, you know, back then when I was applying, I wanted to cry my eyes out. I was like, why can't I get a job? But then when I would go to conferences and I was like, you know, a couple months into my career as a DevRel, like out in the world, I would meet people and they'd be like, hey, do you want a job here? We'd love for you to work there. And these same companies, I'd be like, funny story. I applied to work at your company, but your recruiting software filtered me out. So like, I felt like I had to do a lot of educating on like, you know, people always ask these questions, where do we find these like non-traditional diverse background people? And you have to let them through the front door. And a lot of it is not you. And that's something I share with my people that I mentor and bootcamp grads is, I know it's hard to not take it personally, especially when you get an auto rejection like that, but it gets better. That's the good news, is it does get better with experience, but you really have to just like get ready to get a whole lot of rejection thrown your way. But you know, eventually you'll hate recruiters. You'll be like, stop emailing me, please. I don't want you to reach out anymore.
Oh, I switched to the screen. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good. Do it. Share it. We got it.
I'm gonna make it bigger there. We'll switch.
We do have a question here that says, how do I get a recruiter interested in helping me? So I actually would advise, you know, recruiters are a great communication device, you know, through HR and getting through the process, but we'll get into this later in the series, but networking with people who actually work in that space and on the team and getting a referral internally is very, very powerful and can help get you to the top of the pile. So I would almost encourage you to like,
that's how I ended here.
Yeah, network with, like, build your network. We'll be talking a lot about, I hate the word networking though. I call it friend making, which is corny, but like, networking, I don't like it. Yeah, but that's a good question that we'll cover, Jeremy. But I would say you gotta kind of sneak in through the back door almost, like find those people who can help, you know, a lot of people who went through my boot camp had mentors or people that, you know, helped get them interviews at different companies that they worked at. So yeah. We have Mike here saying, as a hiring manager, I personally hate hiring through recruiters. Yeah, you kind of, my relationship with recruiters has changed significantly, even as a former recruiter, working as an engineer. So I feel you on that one, Mike. But I love recruiters. I mean, as a former recruiter, I empathize with recruiters. I understand the hustle. I understand the sourcing game. I get it. So be nice to recruiters, but also, pro tip, go through your network. It's pretty powerful to get a referral. And you can get, the people make money from referrals sometimes, which is it's hugely beneficial.
I was going to say, like, so YouTube has been like a big networking opportunity for me. And the reason, like, I met the people who eventually referred me to my role at Microsoft. So we could talk a bunch about that later on. But I mean, let's switch to my resume so y'all can roast me on this. Yeah. This is from 2019, or let me see, actually, when is this from? So I was actually still in my cloud engineering gig. So this was 2 roles before. Here we go. All right. It's a one-pager, Chloe. It's a one-pager. What do you think about that?
I mean, kudos. See way too many long resumes in my time as a recruiter and as an engineer.
And like my entire professional experience is on this one-pager. And I felt like when I was making it, I'm like, should I put more? Like, I feel like so arrogant with like making it so short because I felt like, oh, I don't need to make a like super long resume. But anyway, we start with the Apple Store one, this technical specialist. And you see, I think I remember someone telling me, it's like, just put like a few bullet points of like the most important things. I'm not saying this is a great resume example. I'm just saying like, this was my mindset when I put this together. Right. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. The role, the things that I did. Is this large enough for people? Like, let me know. Should I do one more thing in here? You can full screen it. Yeah, cool. Then I got my service desk, help desk gig. again, there's a bunch of bullet. Though help desk is like, it's very, very, very repetitive. If you like look back at it and you sort of take apart what you were actually doing, you can get like a bunch of things that you can actually talk about there. Then we got my sysadmin gig in here too. There's, oh my goodness. I think at one point you were talking about how there are some gigs where it's like it'll be, a support role at one place is going to be completely different than a support role at another place, even though you have the same role title.
Even like an office manager, I found that
Mhm.
like your mileage varies at each company job title wise, even as a dev role, truly.
I think any space in tech, this is why I always tell people to pay attention more to the description than the actual role, because you never know what you're actually going to end up working on unless you like read that thing, right? So I was doing Atlassian Suite administration, Office 365, and then help desk, scripting, documenting, and then some cloud stuff as a sysadmin, right? So it was like, it was like so much going on there. And then my last one on this one is my cloud engineering gig, which was at that point my current gig, I guess. And then I had my certifications up top, but I also had my email and my YouTube. My YouTube was up in there because I had a bunch of videos already, and I knew that in terms of like showcasing my technical skill set, that I could do, like, people could go watch my videos and they could see like, yeah, I know what I'm talking about, kind of thing, right?
Gwen, this is not a terrible resume. Like, truly, like,
Really?
no, because like there's a couple things on here that I'm like, okay, my eye immediately goes, like, my biggest piece of feedback for most people's resumes is just like, ugh, like this is too much, and my eye needs to be able, and I think there's some statistic, I'll clarify it for our resume episode, that recruiters spend like 10 seconds looking at your resume and can make a decision.
Mhm.
That is true. Like, I can always just immediately be like, yes, okay, great. First of all, your name is nice and big. You've got I love that you used youtube.com/made-by-GPS, something easy.
Easy
I've
to go
seen
to.
so many links and resumes that are like linkedin.com/in/ my parents' Wi-Fi password, like just like insane links that I'm like, this is a PDF, sir. I'm not gonna type this in by hand.
Mhm.
I love that the bullet points that you have are relevant,
Mhm.
which is really, really good. You've got the dates that you were there, the job titles. Like, I think with a little makeover, with a little magic dust in Canva or Microsoft Word, perhaps,
Yeah,
it could be a really stellar like candidate resume, but it's not bad. I was expecting some like Comic Sans up in here or something.
Oh, really?
So.
It does feel a little. It feels a little too serious. It feels a little too enterprisey. Like it needs like some pizzazz. Maybe we can redo it.
Yes,
Oh
I
my
was just gonna
goodness.
say,
We should
let's have
redo
a
it.
makeover.
Makeover.
Makeover. Oh my god, I love that. We'll get it into a good place for the resume episode, and we'll just do a resume makeover for Gwen of the past.
I'm gonna try to see, because I remember my first resume for my from help desk to junior sysadmin was like 3 pages. I'm gonna see if I can find it.
Yes.
I'll have to like go back to my backups and stuff like that, and I would love to redo those, because just looking back at like, it's just like so many questions, like what do I put on, what do I not put on, how do I word this, all that kind of stuff.
What if we did a contest and we're like, submit your resume and we'll give it a makeover?
Ooh.
Maybe that's gonna be a new thing on the show coming soon. We have a comment here that says, I'd be really curious on books Chloe has read. You're very articulate and knowledgeable. That is so kind. This is just life.
That's very
experience.
true.
This is just a hard life of getting rejected and changing careers. I've lost my Phoenix Project book. Phoenix Project is great. I would highly recommend for anybody coming into this industry. That's a gift that my very first manager, shout out to Dan Garfield at CodeFresh, gave me when I started. And it's for anybody who's not familiar. The first part is a fictional kind of tale of like why DevOps and sysadmin, everything, like how all of the pieces of this tech stuff comes together. And I think that indeed was a very helpful book. But truly, I like, when I'm not coding, I listen to a lot of trash, you guys. I watch a lot of 90 Day Fiance and Real Housewives.
We bond over that.
Yeah, I don't know what. I'm so glad that I am coming off articulate, because I have watched a lot of musicals, though. Maybe it's the theater.
You know,
in my background.
What it is? It is the diversity in your background that makes you such an interesting person. Wait, speaking about the Phoenix Project, I want to tell you a little story. So when I was interviewing for my sysadmin gig, so this one, which eventually turned into cloud engineer, and then that turned into like a bunch of other things. I land the first interview. I go in. I had the first interview was with the hiring manager. And we have the interview. It's like an hour long, and then we have like a 5-minute period because he was like, hey, I'd like you to meet the CEO and the CTO, but give him like 5 minutes. And then we were just having small chat. And then as this like a chit chat question, he asks, are you reading anything currently? And I tell him, yeah, I'm actually reading the Phoenix Project, which I was genuinely reading that book. And he was like, no way, I'm actually reading that book too. And then we bonded, and then later on I asked him, like, was the fact that I was interested in these things outside of like the role, and I was like going out of my way to learn more about these things and read these kind of books, like a reason why I landed the role. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. The fact that we had like a back and forth, we bonded over the story, the plots, which characters we liked, and things like that definitely worked in your favor. So that book holds a very, very special place in my heart.
I love that. Okay, hot tip, read the Phoenix Project.
Read the Phoenix Project.
Love that. We should get like some kickback on that. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I love this. It just needs a little shaping to the salon. Oh my gosh. That's literally going to be us on the resume episode. We also have a great question. We'll get into this on the resume episode. So join us. What is that? Next week?
I think that's next.
Oh, 2 from now. We're doing LinkedIn, then resumes. So
okay, LinkedIn.
Join us next week because we have fun here. But also join us for the resume one. And also, y'all, all of these will be available afterward. I mean, I love when people join live though, because we can like contour.
It's great. Love the chat. Love the questions.
To all the stuff you guys ask. But I have a lot of thoughts about. I'll give my quick answer to this. I always say send a non-editable version, so a PDF when you're sending it to people. It's a little bit different these days because everything's on the interwebs. People aren't printing out your resumes, but we'll be addressing all of that on the resume episode. Let's see. Someone had raffle on Twitter. That could be a great idea for makeovers.
I would love to make over some resumes. It would be great.
Yeah. We do that with our Microsoft student ambassadors a lot. I call it Extreme Home Makeover Resume Edition. I used to do it at our physical reactor space in San Francisco, where I would get a brave volunteer from the audience and like live drag them to filth. No, I'm just kidding. Live do a makeover of their resume, because it's amazing what a little like sprucing up, in Microsoft Word, Canva, all these great services available, because we're not all designers and stuff. Like, I certainly, graphic design is my passion, but like I mean, I did make this beautiful background that we
love
have
it
here.
love it
Yeah, okay, let's see, I'm going through the comments here. Wow, this time has gone by fast, y'all.
Yeah, we're almost at time. It's been such a great episode though.
It's been so great. Let's see. Ooh, we kind of answered this earlier, but is having a tech degree or working towards getting one a big advantage or more of a nice to have? You know what? It's different for everyone.
Yeah,
if you weren't here earlier in the stream, go back and watch the first part. But I think, we're all different. I certainly could not afford where I was at as a, late 20s individual to go to a 4-year school and pay for that again. And I didn't want to go into debt. So I went the boot camp route. I've also mentored wonderful people like PJ Metz and Lorena, who, have done the high school teacher self-taught route, or the professional clown turned boot camp grad. So I think really whatever works for you. If you have the resources and the availability to be able to afford going to a school, that's great. But I also think that there are a lot of really great, I think, Gwen is a great example of that. There's a lot of great free and paid for resources online that are a lot more accessible than, because I had a full-time job, when I was learning to code, and I had to, you don't just wake up one day and you're like, I want to be an engineer today. Like, it's a
commitment. Process. Also, I wanted to add, like, one thing I like to add when people ask about degrees is so the 2 semesters that I did do of comp sci, I did in Ecuador because I was living in South America at the time. And the importance of a degree matters so much on location, right?
Yes.
Like the fact that I have the privilege to move back to the States because I am originally from the States, was because there was no way I was going to get any job at all in living in Ecuador without a degree. And I understand that in countries outside of the US and a bunch of other countries that don't necessarily put as much of importance on a degree, it's easy for us to forget, like, oh yeah, you don't need that,
right.
So like we want to be super careful with that as well. I'm not going to tell you that you don't need it, right? Like there's just it's unfortunate to say that the answer is it depends, right?
Yeah, it depends on what roles, what area. Real quick, we had a question in the chat about how can I get recruiters to stop ghosting me? I actually wrote a blog about this when I was in the frustration of 2017 of getting my first job.
Oh, you did?
This
That's
is
awesome.
called
You got a
Don't
link?
Ghost Me, Bro. I dropped the link in the chat already, but I'll do it again.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
For anybody just joining us now. But this is a article that I wrote from the perspective of being a recruiter, and also a plea to recruiters to stop doing this. You're not alone in that frustration and feeling. Basically, what I go into this is like, please stop making me want to cry myself to sleep every night. But check out that article. We'll definitely be getting into that. I also see some questions in the chat here about when's the best time to apply? Is there a best time of year? My quick answer to that, we'll get into this a lot more when we go into like
Solid
the
question.
cover letters, resume stuff. I do have some exclusive recruiter tips here. I have a lot of thoughts about what part of the week you should apply. As far as seasonally, no, I think, the market's very hot right now. I think a lot of people post pandemic, it's a unique time in hiring right now.
Absolutely.
But there were a lot of folks in my boot camp who were like, oh, I'm going to wait, it's the holidays, I'm going to wait to apply. I really do think that's arbitrary. Like, I think that everyone is hiring all the time, and it would behoove you to apply at all times. I don't think there's a season of hiring necessarily. Everyone's always hiring for roles. It's a lot different than theater, where it's like, there's seasons for when shows go on. But that's a great question. And I will be sharing, I'm not going to drop the knowledge now. You got to tune in for the other episodes. But I do have a lot of thoughts as my time of a recruiter on like, don't apply on Mondays. Like, here's why and all of that. So we'll be getting into
there's
all
little
of that fun stuff.
Spoiler there. Hey, maybe critique my resume on the next chat, or I'm assuming you meant live stream.
We might do a little Twitter contest or something.
Yeah, we need to do something.
Figure that out. We'll figure out a submission. We'll follow us on Twitter here, and also our YouTubes and everything like that. I have a link tree in my Twitter bio. Y'all can check out. I'm at Chloe Connor on Twitter. Gwen is
Made by GPS.
But definitely we'll be posting any information that's upcoming about like, submit your resumes for feedback, cover letters for feedback. Oh my goodness.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Happy to do that. Oh my gosh, we've only got a couple minutes left, Gwen. Okay. What else? Is there any other comments we want to, I just got turned down from a job I wanted. That's literally my life. Like, I hate to say it, but like, truly a big part of this process, like a big mistake that I see, and again, we'll get into this in other episodes, is putting all your eggs in one basket and be like, my dream is to work at, I'm going to say Orange, not Apple, but like, I want to be a software engineer at Orange Incorporated or Widgets Worldwide, and then not getting that job and going through I have a really quick, interesting story that I'll tell you real quick, which is the best advice I got from my mentor, Patricia Lawless. Shout out to Patricia, my mentor from Hackbright. So she told me this story about how when you interview, especially in person, there is this kind of, you go through, it's almost like a first date, right? Like, you get your on-site and you're like, oh my gosh, like, they have the snacks that I want, and I can ride my bike to work, and this would be the so perfect thing. And you kind of, this would happen to me as an actress a lot. I'd be like, oh my God, I want this part so bad. Like, I want to play Elle Woods in Legally Blonde so bad. And then when you don't get it, it's like a piece of you dies, right? Because you have envisioned yourself in this role. So the most common mistake I see is people being like, oh my God, I got my interview at my dream company. I'm going to cancel my other interviews or stop applying to other ones because I want to focus on this. Don't do that. Like, truly, you need to keep your options wide and open. Apply to as many places as you can. My best advice, and the advice that Patricia gave me, is like, be really mindful of that. Like, don't start, I hate this metaphor, but like planning the wedding on the first date. Like, you really
absolutely
need to, like, my dream always was to work at Microsoft, but it certainly wasn't my first job. I needed experience to get me this job here. So shout out to Patricia. Love you, Patricia.
I will add to that I was rejected twice to Microsoft before, and the third time was when I received an actual offer. But my mindset was always like, I'm going to get there somehow, someday. Maybe now I'm going to go for a different role or a different job or a different company. That might be it. But like, long term, and just remember, in tech, there are always new roles. There are always new companies. There are always new things that you can get into. Just because it's no now doesn't mean it's not like a yes in the long term. So keep that mindset, and then let's get it done.
Yeah. And we're taking notes of all these questions for the next one, Brendan. Yes, that was a subtle call to the show that we did, how to succeed in business without really trying. And also, y'all, another quick piece of advice before we end things. I always tell, especially juniors and new candidates, you have to learn how to interview as an engineer in this space. Like, you don't
Yes.
just do your first whiteboarding interview. The best advice that I can give you, especially if you've never interviewed as an engineer before, I know we have all these, reach and goal jobs like Microsoft or Airbnb or Uber or whatever it may be. Don't have that be your first interview, because you need to learn how to interview. I know it sounds so backwards, but like, interviewing as an engineer, and we'll get into that a lot in this series, it's not just here's my resume, I'm a nice person. You
Right.
whiteboard. It's a whole thing. So
There's a lot.
we'll be getting into all of that. Okay, we covered so
We gotta go.
We gotta go.
We gotta
do
go.
the other parts of our job. But we will see y'all next week. Same time.
Next week, same time.
place. And in the meantime, tweet us your other questions. Like, if there's things you want us to cover or we didn't cover, we'll make notes of all of them.
Just mention us. We're paying attention.
We're paying attention. And I guess the only way to close this stream is to play
A slapper.
that slapping song.
Slapper.
Oh my gosh. So everybody have fun in the chat while we jam out to this, and we'll see you next week on How Can We Help You? Bye.